We often talk about how modern gaming is different from titles of the past, but I'd like to start today's video by talking about a way in which it's similar. This might just be for me, but I usually have one main game I'm working on, typically a longer 40+ hour affair with lots of story, like Baldur's Gate 3, or depth, like Elden Ring. Then I'll have a smaller number of side games that I can sit down and play for a little bit without having to worry about keeping track of continuity or complex statistics. These days, that's mostly fighting games with fare like Mortal Kombat 1 and Multiverses, but over the years I've spent time with other genres and franchises. In my youth, I was much more into racing games than I am today, thrilled at the prospect of beating all the ghosts, unlocking all the vehicles, and getting as close to 100% completion as my twitch reflexes could handle. So while I was plugging hours into one of the many Final Fantasies that captured my attention in the 90s, I'd often cool down with a little time spent on titles like Super Mario Kart, Diddy Kong Racing, or today's subject. I'm Eric J. Chucky, and welcome to Violent Profiles, where we discuss obscure video games and the rosters that define them. Before we speed into today's subject, it would help me out a lot if you'd blow up that like button with your homing missiles, drop a comment with your thoughts, or give me a boost by hitting subscribe. Small channels thrive on viewer support, and the algorithm likes it when you hit buttons. And tell your friends. Back in my day, we said keep circulating the tapes, but none of that is relevant anymore, so share that hyperlink. Man, nobody says that anymore either, do they? What do people say? Skibbity toilet. Rizzler. Full cap, no cattle. The first two games in the Extreme G line were developed by Probe Entertainment, published by Acclaim, and released on the N64 in '97 and '98, with the sequel eventually getting a port on Windows some 6 months later. I only discovered doing research for this video that there were in fact 2 more games that I'll try to cover sometime in the future. With the end of Windows 10 less than a year away, I'll have to upgrade my rig eventually, and hopefully that means a chance to explore some sequels and other content my current setup can't handle. I do also want to step in here and acknowledge that this is a racing game, and up until now this series has been about fighting games. The times they are changing, it's true, but there's often thematic overlap between character lineups of titles like these, and there are only so many fighting games in the world. Covering other genres has always been part of the plan since I rebooted the series, and we'll continue to talk about button bashers for as long as we can, but after 2 years, it's time to spread our wings and meet the weird rosters beyond those borders. Now then, the backdrop of Extreme G that gives us license to race futuristic motorcycles really fast while shooting weapons is a post-scarcity future where everyone is bored from getting all their wants and needs met. They crave action. They crave excitement.
Step into a Slim Jim!
Oh, Randy, the Slim Jims aren't cutting it anymore. The people need high-speed thrills, the likes of which a stick of processed meat couldn't hope to emulate. So the government sets up the Extreme G races on worlds they've already depleted of resources. Even your average citizen can hope to jack in and join up, competing in virtual heats to someday qualify for the real deal, and maybe get a chance to live it up on the new world. It's kind of the plot of that lame Gran Turismo movie, except that still takes place on the first world we're destroying. Extreme G2, or XG2 if you're radical, picks up 25 years later as a group of young G addicts take it upon themselves to build their own real-life G-bikes with real speed, real weapons, and real death. The new bikes are faster, more dangerous, and require honed skills from their pilots. This brought in military attention, and seeing the potential for new weapon designs, new assault vehicles, and people brave, insane, and capable enough to pilot them, they helped fund the project. Tracks were built and an official tournament structure was set up, commercializing the original garage races while at the same time keeping their violent, destructive soul. That's the 21st century way. We're, living in the 21st century now, in case you haven't noticed, so expect those G-bikes anytime now. Both games have lots of modes with time trials, tournament cups, battle arenas, and so on. Like Mario Kart, you can pick up items on the track to sabotage your opponents, hence why this still qualifies as a violent profile, but every bike also has a weaker primary weapon they can use all the time. These games are good. There's your evaluation. They were good back then, they're still good today, even if the graphics aren't up to modern standards. What both games don't have, however, are character bios. So, why say I'm covering both games if I'm not? Well, mostly because if I just posted a video for Extreme G2, some folks would spend time looking for a first one that doesn't exist. There are also 2 returning bikes from the original game, even if it's unlikely that they're the same pilots given the plot. In that spirit, before we move on to actual people from these games, let's say a brief hello and goodbye to Raze, Rana, Khan, Jolt, Mame, Apollyon, Roach, and Neon. First up is Muga, piloted by Pepe Stiletto, the bike dominating the cover of the original game. This is your typical heavy vehicle with high armor and top speed but low acceleration. Something I enjoy about Muga is that it had moderate handling but low weapons. A welcome change from the Bowsers of my youth. Peppa herself secretly works for the military organization for Outer Galactic Assassins, although I call the idea that it's a secret into question since the acronym for the organization is the name of her G-Bike. Most believe she's currently working a contract for multi-trillionaire Max Bypass, but her specific motive for joining the competition remains a mystery. And it will remain one. There are no character endings for these games, which was the norm with racing titles. They were about the breakneck speed of the journey, not the Akira slide stop to the destination. The other returning bike is Grimace, an entry in the grand tradition of painting a scary face on the front of your vehicle. A quality all-round cycle with a small emphasis on shielding, Grimace is plastered on every other page of the first game's manual. Its pilot is Sly Slipstream, a distant relative of Mac Tonight. Look at that chin. The king of the business world, Sly is ruthless on the track despite treating the races as a weekend hobby to blow off steam. As with the rest of his life's pursuits, be they finance, fame, or chin-maxing, he plays to win. Another cover star, one half of the G-Bikes on the front of the XG2 box, belongs to Velocity Kendo, which is an amazing name. I'm sad we don't name more children sick-ass stuff like Velocity in the actual 21st century. She's the daughter of Supreme Chairman Ben Kendo of the planet Canis, and a freedom fighter who uses her knowledge of martial arts and proto-molecular mechanics to support her cause and win races. Her cycle, the G-Spark, is another solid all-rounder with an emphasis on weapons. The other cover cycle, Zeo Max, belongs to Crash Crisis, a Sporticus-style super athlete who excels at everything he takes interest in. Ex-student of the Rock Iron Military Academy in that he was expelled for his anti-authority attitude, the biggest obstacle between Crash and extreme glory is his own arrogance. Zeo Max's focus is on handling with low acceleration and weapons, but moderate top speed and shields. That's an interesting combination. Let's 0-point turn to Roxy Tempo, pilot of the Boomsta with its extremely low-profile rear end. Having made a name for herself in music, film, and the literary world, Roxy is looking to dominate a racier venture.
Pornography!
But no, racing. It was a pun, man. Get your mind out of the gutter. Something of the opposite side of the coin from Sly Slipstream, Roxy continues to chase clout and other accolades, and her love of life in the fast lane made Extreme G the natural choice for her next venture. In that vein, Boomsta sacrifices acceleration and shielding for pure speed. Thankfully, the handling isn't that bad, otherwise you might find yourself flying back into the gutter. Future descendant of the late great Wayne Static, Flux Cobalt drives the Freaker, a bike with the same generic alien logo on the side that he wears on his chest. Acceleration and handling are the name of the game here. Flux is in this game to race, not to fight. While his motivations aren't explicitly clear thanks to immersed reality syndrome scrambling his mind,
it's brain scramblies.
He cites the beliefs of several bizarre cults as inspiring him to enter the tournament. Thankfully, the youngest racer in Extreme G2 is also likely the most brilliant, and his addled amygdala gives him license to blaze forward without fear. I recall spending a little time with Flux and some of the secret bikes in my youth with this game, but my mainstay was the Wraith and its pilot Aerodynamics. That is such a good comic book name. A hard-working man who put in time on a space freighter at minimum wage, his downtime was spent pursuing an education to chase his dreams until a lucky turn on the galactic stock market saw him become an overnight millionaire. Once money stopped being an obstacle, he put his funds into building a custom G-bike and set his sights on winning the Extreme G2 tournament. In Errol's mind, the perfect cycle doesn't need shields or acceleration if the rest of the competition is blown to smithereens with advanced weapon systems. I drove it because I thought it looked cool, and Wraith is a cool name. Wraith. By contrast, if I picked this game up today and chose a bike purely based on visuals, it would be the Pink Nightmare Velifier owned by Olympic champion Ruby DeBomb. Despite her bike being more focused on maneuverability and acceleration, there's a dark part of the soft-spoken creative Ruby that takes great pleasure in the weaponry involved in the contest. It's the surge of adrenaline in her soul that scatters every thought out of control, not because she's the one the crowds have come to see, but because Extreme G2 gives her license to kill. Dark Duality. I like it. Very Ava Max. Ruby and Velifier actually aren't in the European or default Steam releases of the game, replaced by the Honda Pantheon and, as far as I know, Rhonda DeBomb in an appropriately matching outfit. Perhaps they're twins, perhaps it was just a localization change, I don't know. Extreme G2 had sponsorships from Diesel Clothing and Storm Watches as well. You can see various advertising for them throughout the game, which is kinda neat. I don't mind being marketed to during my video game, so long as it makes sense. If you'd like to play Ruby in the very decent Steam port of Extreme G2, it's as simple as editing the names of a few files to queue her and her bike up where they're supposed to be. Heir to the throne of the planet Lumania, Alexander Bonatti doesn't have a cool future name, but he certainly sounds like a race car driver. Impressed by footage of the original sport, he commissioned a track to be built on his home planet, so of course he was chomping at the bit to join when Extreme G2 started. Alexander is characterized as being in favor of fair play, not wanting to know the design of his own track so that he couldn't hold an advantage over anyone else. But he also kitted out his G-Bike Vex to prioritize weapons and shields over literally everything else. I think maybe he and Ruby might have a lot in common. The final main roster pilot is Natasha Vert, driver of Surge. Yeah, sure, she drives a can of discontinued soda. It sacrifices top speed and weapons to max out acceleration, which is honestly an accurate review of Coca-Cola's answer to Mountain Dew. Natasha has entered into the contest in a bid for respect. Growing up on the streets and clubs of Anvil, a place where the sun doesn't rise and the party never stops, this aggressive queen of the night has a dangerous reputation that earned her the nickname The Witch. And if she has her say, that mean streak will take her to the pinnacle of Extreme G2. There are 3 unlockable bikes in the game. Venom, piloted by Hatra Toxic, who wins the award for worst name in the game. Wasp, which was designed by a contest-winning fan named Daniel Hopp and is driven by Tiger. And for my money, the coolest looking cycle, Spectre, with its equally cool rider, Alien X. You might be an alien. It might just be a name and a gimmick. I don't know. These guys are secrets, so obviously they don't have bios in the manual like the rest of the contestants. You can also unlock each non-secret pilot on foot, and I'm not sure why other than reusing assets they already made, but it is pretty amusing, especially when they start Naruto running when they go really fast. Both N64-era Extreme G games had a nice selection of cheats and codes to tweak your experience in interesting ways, but even the vanilla presentation was well executed. I particularly loved the effect of breaking the sound barrier in the second game, and that soundtrack hit at the perfect time for me as I was just getting more into electronic music. Y'all love that Goldeneye pause theme, but the Extreme G2 menu music isn't far behind it. This was a fun trip down memory lane, and a great game to boot, but next time on Violent Profiles, I think it's time to revisit a topic I covered in the original quartet of videos I affectionately refer to as Season 0. Art should evolve over time after all, just try not to gasp when you see what's next. If you'd like to see it now, head over to our Patreon and support us at the $5 tier to see it and future episodes a whole month early. This channel isn't monetized, so that's the only way I make money off the hard work I put into these videos. And I appreciate each and every one of you so much for helping me follow my dreams. All the names currently on screen have done that, and I am oh so very grateful. Until next time, White out.